So this is the front page. It recently changed. So if you looked at the legislative website last year, you may want to peek at it again just to make sure that you know where everything moved to. We're going to go over just a few areas, the things that we use the most at the ACLU to track bills and to see what's actually happening at the legislature. And so we're going to start at the very top of the screen up here where it says Home, House, Senate, Bills and Laws, News and Watch. If you click on Bills and Laws, this is what you're going to see. And this is going to bring you pretty much all the information you need to know about the current legislative session. But there are a few things that I'm going to focus on that are primarily in this box, which again kind of has all of the information you need to know. So this has all of the bill statuses. So it has whether a bill has been heard or held for further study. It has all of the committee agendas. It has the legislative commissions that are set up, which we aren't necessarily talking about today, but are really important. It has committee calendars. It has committee votes, which is something we reference all the time. So if you know there was a vote taken in a committee and you want to know which legislators had which vote on something, you can go and reference that. It has the floor calendars for the House and Senate every day. Daily introductions is really important. That's where you see every bill that's been introduced in a certain day. Floor votes, committee memberships, which is also really important. If you want to know exactly who's on House Judiciary, you can go there. And then it also has all of the Rhode Island general laws. So as you can see, there's a lot of information here. I would never torture you again by making you sit through a PowerPoint about a website. But we're going to go over three things very briefly, which are probably the links that we use most every day. The first thing is if you hit bill status history, you'll go to this page. There's a lot of ways to find the bills that you're looking for. If you know you're looking for a very specific bill, this is a great place to start. There's a lot of different categories that you can put in, and you don't have to put all of them in, I think is a really important thing. So if you're looking just for 2024 bills on education, you could just put that in and hit enter. Or if you're wondering what your legislator has sponsored this year, you can just put in their sponsor name and enter, and it'll bring up all the bills they've sponsored. If you want to know for which ones they're the prime sponsor, you can do that as well. You can also look by bill number, which is really helpful. And you can also look up by action. I didn't fill in action, but you can look up bills that have passed already. So there's a lot of really useful things on here. But I filled in a piece of legislation that Representative Speakman sponsored for us, which is a bill on school computer privacy, which she'll be talking about briefly in just a moment. But you can see that if I put in all this information, it'll bring me straight to that piece of legislation. And so this is when you're looking at the General Assembly website, if you're looking at a specific bill, this is the information that'll come up for it. And so there are a few really important pieces of information that I want to highlight. First is the bill number, which is always up there. Then you have the sponsors, which is right underneath. The House and the Senate both publish the top 10 sponsors for a piece of legislation, but just because this is all the sponsors you see doesn't mean that that's the only sponsors. So like there are pieces of legislation that'll get like 50 sponsors, but only the top 10 will show up. So it doesn't mean that because your legislator isn't listed that they aren't necessarily supporting that bill. Then it has the summary of the legislation, and then the other thing that's really helpful is it tells you what committee it's been introduced to. So you know what committee it's going to receive a hearing in. And then if you click on that bill, this is what it's gonna look like up top. It's gonna have that same information. It's gonna have the bill number. It's gonna have, again, who the bill was introduced by, who it's sponsored by, what date it was introduced, and then what committee it was referred to. The second thing that we always look at is the committee calendars, and that is a very, very useful part because we go up every single week, mostly every single day. I had to pull a graphic from 2020, which may be a traumatizing, yeah.
That looked way busy.
Yeah. This actually may be a very traumatizing calendar for some to look at because I think it was the last one before you can see that. Yeah, we'll just pretend that we didn't know it came after that. But this is what the committee calendar will look like for a typical session when things get going. You can see that there are a ton of House committees. There are a ton of, actually there are no Senate committees. Okay, pretend some of those are Senate committees. But you can see that there's a lot of legislative activity happening every day. And what these committee calendars will show you is what the committee is, what time that committee is meeting, and then also what is actually on that agenda and what place the committee is meeting at. So even though this isn't realistic to what this session looks like necessarily, when things really get going, because we do this training at the beginning of the session, sometimes there isn't necessarily a dramatic reveal for what 2024 looks like in terms of committee calendars, but I think this is pretty representative of when we really get going, what it looks like. And then the last thing I want to talk about really quickly are the daily introductions, which is where you can go to see what bills are actually being introduced every day. So this is from last week. You can see that there have been weeks of daily introductions already. If you click on any of these dates, it'll take you to those bills that have been introduced. And we look at every single bill that's introduced. So this is one of those links that we use all the time. Now, the other very important aspects is information about how to actually find your senator or representative. Just to give one example, if you click on House, this will bring you to the House of Representatives. And if you scroll down all the way, it'll have this additional information, including the representative contact information, which is very helpful. It'll have the seating chart. The seating chart is really helpful if you're going up and doing in-person lobbying and you don't know necessarily where your legislator sits on the floor. It has that information. The contact information has email, it has phone number. Again, these are resources I use every single day. So this is really important. It used to be near to the top of the page. Just scroll all the way down again if you're looking at the Assembly website and you're like, things have changed. So